All right, I've got another book series for you, and this time we're looking at book 2. So hello and welcome back. This week I am reviewing book 2 of the Marchetti series. The first was House of the Marchetti. I almost said the Marchetti. This time around, it's Rise of Marchetti. So book 2 picks up just where book 1 left off. Lucan, Mr. Tall, Dark, and Handsome, is in critical condition. He's been shot. Jack, his newly found love interest, is honestly, she's frantic. She's stressed. I wouldn't be surprised if she has like PTSD or something, but I'm no doctor. So we pick up with him being shot and rushed away to the hospital. We see briefly where Jack is in interrogation with the police. We see where they try to visit Lucan, and it's very much kind of your typical, oh my gosh, someone's been shot, sort of like beginning, where everyone's frantic, everyone's trying to figure out what's going on, everyone's coping in their own weird ways. Jack takes a lot of showers and she cries a lot. Some of it's because, you know, her boyfriend just got shot right in front of her and there's blood all over her, and that's like super traumatic. And so of course, who wouldn't be crying? And also, like, with all that blood, like, she had to tourniquet his leg, like there's just blood everywhere, but there's a lot of showers. And thankfully for Jack, some of them get to be a little bit more exciting later on. But I'll get to that in a sec. We do get to not necessarily meet a new character, but learn a little bit more about a character that we previously had. So there's Jessie, or Jessica Quinn. It's a little unclear if she's just like a stripper or just someone else who works in the casino, but she is called to help Frankie. And if y'all remember, or if you don't, Frankie was Lucan's underboss, and he kind of acts as attorney for everyone in the family, which now includes Jack. And it's awkward because in the first book, Frankie's on thin ice because he like freaks out at Jack and basically is like, you're no good, you're a liability, like you need to get out, who do you think you are, type of deal. But everyone is like enamored by Jack. Varying levels, of course. No one more so than Lucan, obviously, because it's their love story. But still, everyone is just like really fascinated by her, including Frankie, much to the frustration of some of the other characters. Anyway, so we learn a little bit more about Jessica, and she turns out to be like an interesting, I guess she'd be an antagonist, yeah, because I don't want to give too much away, but she kind of undermines in unexpected ways. And that was an interesting thing that I wasn't expecting. So, but on the note of the plot, the first book I feel like was very contextual. It was setting up who is Jack, who is Lucan, how are they navigating their new relationship. And then with this book, it's almost more, well, it's more character focused. We learn more about Jack and her mental health and her coping or lack thereof, because you see, the family, they send Lucan, or they don't send Lucan away. They send Jack away because Lucan's in critical condition and they're concerned that his treatment has been compromised. They're concerned that there's an inside man in the hospital trying to finish the job. And so they lie to her and they're like, you need to go home. And for 6 months, she's anxious. She's probably kind of depressed. She's grieving. She's lost a lot of weight. She's been hospitalized. Like, it's just a rough time for her. And it was really interesting because kind of like, how can you have a Rise of Marchetti if Marchetti dies, you know? So we all knew he didn't die. Anyway, so when he does come back, Jack to some degree, rightfully so, and to some degree I was kind of like, ooh, you're overreacting just a touch, I think. She loses it. She gets belligerently drunk, she rounds everybody up, and it's kind of like celebrity roast, but not the fun kind, because she's like, you knew and you didn't tell me, and you knew and you didn't tell me, and there's this one line of the book that I just thought was so great, because it was like, Lucan knew that she was saying it in these ways to piss everybody off, because she was like, and what about that one night that we spent together, huh? And of course Lucan, very jealous, very possessive, like he's not happy. Some of the other characters, they're also like, oh my gosh, why is she making it sound worse than it actually was? So like you get to see more into her, and you do get to see a little bit more into Lucan, which like, I do like him. I think he's a really interesting character, and I love his passion for Jack, for his work, but like he could go to anger management. I think it's kind of that he's a little bit of that stereotypical bombastic, like Latin/Italian lover type, which like is great for mafia boss dude, I guess. And on that note too, just while I'm thinking about it, at one point Jack quotes Al Capone, and I thought that was really funny, because she quotes Al Capone and she's being all tough, and then she's like, oh my gosh, did I really just quote Al Capone to a bunch of gangsters? Meanwhile, the gangsters are like, did she just quote Al Capone to us? Like, does she know? Does she know more than we thought that she knew? So I just thought that was really funny. But yeah, it's very much more character driven, book 2. And we get to see more of Jack. And I liked that. But at the same time, I think we could have seen more. Like, I wanted to know a little bit more about those 6 months, because I felt like it was kind of like, I don't know why I keep bringing up Twilight in all these vlogs, but it kind of felt like Twilight, how in book 2, coincidentally, when Edward leaves and he's like, I have to, and then it's just like January, February, March, or whatever those months are, because it just skips ahead to 6 months later. And on one hand, I think it's effective, because then it would just be a really long book, and like, I don't need to know all of her trauma. And I think Christopher Ann's flashbacks to said trauma and like difficult experiences, like when she was in the hospital, or that was just really briefly, or like her birthday without Lucan, I think those are really well done. So I loved those flashbacks, because it gave even more context to her very fragile state of mind. But like, I think more would have been really cool. So I don't want to give too much away, because it was a really interesting read. It was a very quick read. It's 43 chapters, but don't let that like overwhelm you, because they're fairly quick chapters. I don't know, probably like 2 to 7 minutes, depending on how quick of a reader you are or how long the chapter is. I think if you like crime, if you like mob stories, if you like a little romance, because, you know, Lucan and Jack have this incredible chemistry and spark that like everybody in the room feels. So if you like romance, this book has it for you. But on the flip side, if you don't like romance, I don't 100% know what you're doing here, since I feel like I talk about a lot of romance books. But if you're not super big on romance, if you're not super big on like crime, this might not be the book series for you. But even so, it's just really good. I think probably the biggest triggers would be like, if you're really sensitive to swearing, there are a lot of F-bombs. There are some, as I said, sensual scenes, sometimes in the shower, sometimes not. I don't think that they're super graphic though. I wouldn't say that. It's just kind of like, not tween, but it's like teen. It's like teen, like they were panting as they were making out, and she gasped at the pressure, and I'm doing a really bad job trying to explain the level of sensuality, but like it's not graphic. That's my point. You don't have to hear about every thrust and grunt. Anyway, but if sex scenes are a little bit triggering for you, there are a few. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's a solid read. I read through it probably in about 2 days just because I kept getting interrupted with like life. It was just really good. I'm really excited to check out her third book eventually. It's a trilogy, so a series of 3. The first book I definitely recommend as well, just because I think it's interesting that, I mean, I feel like the whole he's a tough guy and likes this small town girl, I feel like that's done a lot in terms of like high school movies. But to see it in like a mobster movie, I think it's just a really interesting setting. And as a Coloradan, I love that Jack is also from Colorado, so that's kind of fun too. Anyway, that's all I've got for Rise of Marchetti. Next week, I will be reviewing Matt Nagan's poetry collection, Notes from the Bonfire. It has to do with COVID, so very timely, very interesting, especially now that we're kind of hopefully getting out of it. So in the meantime, happy reading and thanks.